Just a couple things like I would try out. I'm guessing that you're saying like the tightness or the pain is coming from like this upper region here. I'm not sure if it's like post throwing or anything like that. But if it is post throwing, like that's your body telling you like that's a weak point and that you need to kind of like work on that. And unfortunately, you just have to like attack that specifically with things not necessarily that make it hurt, but that put it under stress, and then that is something that you can kind of progress over time. So I would just say like try a couple of these things, like feel what, or try to have that feeling of like, okay, it's putting the stress that's very similar to the pain, like maybe in the same spot or something like that, and then kind of like progressively overload that over time. So just a couple ones I would start with. Just taking a barbell here to start. All right, just picking it up, going knuckles up to get that, just to get the upper side of your forearm to contract. And I would just hold that in an iso hold, and then maybe wrist work it up and down, and then kind of go back and forth from like slow rolling it back and forth. All right, to actually just holding in that iso hold. All right, maybe going back and forth. All right, just kind of rocking up and down. All right, kind of working it back like that, getting the bicep as well. And then flipping it side to side, and maybe just holding for like elongated periods of times. And when I'm saying like hold these iso holds out, I'm talking like, all right, maybe put on like a moderate weight and go for like as long as you can possibly go. So like when your muscle starts to shake, or maybe like a little bit before that the first couple of times, all right, but then kind of progressively get to a point where it's like, all right, I'm really starting to shake and I'm really starting to feel like there's progress, all right, that's occurring over time, all right. Just like this, kind of put your elbow underneath of it. You can kind of do it with the weight as well. All right, just if you want to take the bicep necessarily out of the equation, and just hold. I mean, that's kind of all it is. And then if you want to, just kind of rock back and forth. All right, just really working it. If you want to, kind of get the opposite side as well. But then I would say do other things to it, like work on the extension portion and like do pushbacks. So like when you're stretching out and you're doing like that palm down stretch, like take your wrist and try to push back against it so you get that tendon stretch. If you're doing more of like a passive stretch, you're just elongating the muscular portion, and you're not necessarily like pulling on the tendon to make the tendon a little bit more flexible, if that makes sense. So that tension that you're providing on the pushback is what's going to pull that tendon tighter and pull on that tendon a little bit more, and then therefore going to make it stretch out a little bit more. So maybe that's going to alleviate a little bit more. So think about things like that. Like that's what you're doing with your isos. Your isos, you're trying to strengthen the muscle back as well. All right, but with your pushback, you're trying to also like pull on the actual tendon itself too. All right, so those are two things I'd work on as well. All right, what up? So this is just straight up a rice bucket. It's like literally my favorite grip strengthening thing to do. The reason for it is it's like an accommodating thing. So like if you are weak, so like there are things that kind of hurt you to move. Your body's not going to allow you to like put enough force into moving this rice to actually like rip it, whereas like you kind of don't control the actual forces getting put into like weight that you're holding and stuff like that, because it's like gravity is constantly pulling on it. Like you are just creating the actual friction that occurs with the rice. That's why I kind of like this one here. So you just take your hands and just move them around however you want to. Just kind of work them in ways like you want extension if you're kind of working that backside of the forearm. So think like your fingers like opening out like that. Like that's going to get that portion that I'm thinking is what you're talking about in terms of like having pain and whatnot. And then obviously like afterwards, like post, like get those wrist stretches in and stuff like that. Like you have to kind of like progress